Hey, what's up, everybody? It is July 1st, meaning we are only 27 days away from Packers training camp starting, which is not very long. It's been a long offseason, and we are slowly getting to the end of it, which I'm very, very excited about. It's been a crazy past couple days when it comes to the NBA. I am jealous of the NBA news. It's constantly flying out. I wish it was happening over here for the Packers, but it's just the time of the year we're in, so it makes sense. And sooner or later, we'll be back to having lots of things constantly coming out about the Green Bay Packers. But it is pretty crazy to see the NBA, like all these players forcing their way out of places, like Kevin Durant yesterday coming in and saying he actually doesn't want to be a part of the Knicks, or the Nets. I keep saying Knicks. He wants to be traded from the Nets, and it's crazy to see that going on over there. And I do think this offseason for the NFL, we definitely saw a lot more player movement than I think we've seen in the past. And it's almost like the way that the NBA players are able to basically force their way out of places. It almost seems like that is sort of happening now in the NFL, which does make it at least more entertaining and more exciting because you don't exactly know what's going to happen. So pretty interesting day there in the NBA. But there's one player I want to talk about. Lots of you guys have commented about this player, asking me to make a video on him. I've probably had some DMs about him. I've had some comments in my live stream, some comments in my videos asking about this player. And this player is Juwann Winfree. And when we look at Juwann Winfree and we look at the Packers receiving room, people are saying, you know, can Juwann Winfree be a player to come in and maybe surprise some people? I think lots of people have said to me that they think that he is going to be a player that comes in and potentially makes this Packers wide receiver room. When we look at the Packers wide receiver room, I do think there are currently 6 players who I think are locks to make the roster ahead of him. So the question really comes down to how many wide receivers are the Packers going to keep? It could be 6, it could be 7, maybe 8. I feel like it wouldn't be 8, probably 6 or 7. And so I want to tell you the 6 players I have ahead of him. We have Allen Lazard, Christian Watson, Randall Cobb, Amari Rodgers, Sammy Watkins, and Romeo Doubs. I think that should be 6. I think with Doubs and Watson, with them being first and fourth round picks, the Packers will keep them on the roster. Amari Rodgers being a third round pick last year, I think they'll let him see if he can grow more. Randall Cobb, no doubt, veteran. Allen Lazard, no doubt. And then Sammy Watkins, I think that the way we've seen the Packers talk about him, I think that there's no question the Packers are good. I think he's a lock to make the roster. That's my personal opinion. So that puts 6 guys ahead of Juwann Winfree, and the few other receivers sort of sitting outside of that 6 range, at least for me. Maybe you guys have a different take. Is Malik Taylor, Juwann Winfree, Samori Toure, 7th round pick, Danny Davis, undrafted free agent from Wisconsin. So if Juwann Winfree does make the roster, I think the Packers would need to keep 7, and you'd have to push aside Malik Taylor as well as Samori Toure. And for Juwann Winfree, he now has been in Green Bay for basically 2 years. He was initially drafted back in 2019 by the Broncos in the 6th round. And then in 2020, spent the time on the Packers practice squad. 2021, last year, played 7 games for the Packers, had only 58 receiving yards. In the one game where he really had an opportunity to come in and play more snaps was versus the Arizona Cardinals last year, with Devontae being out, with Lazard being out, and MVS being out as well. He had more opportunities. I think he had 30-something yards in that game. So he has been in the NFL for 3 different years now, and he hasn't really done too much to produce. Maybe it's because he hasn't really had that much opportunity. If you look back to last year for Juwann Winfree, he was playing really well in training camp, and then unfortunately he went down with a shoulder injury, which forced him to miss the preseason games. And so maybe if he didn't get injured last year, he would have made the roster. Unfortunately for him, he didn't make the roster, ended up being released, but was then signed back to the Packers practice squad. But because he is a player who has been here for a couple of years in Green Bay, he does have that leg up over the rookies and Sammy Watkins, that he does have probably a better grasp of the playbook, considering he has been here for 2 years. And I feel like there's always players who come along in training camp that sort of surprise people, and you're like, okay, maybe this guy is going to make the roster. It sort of seemed like it was like that for Juwann Winfree last year. There were lots of us thinking that maybe he would come in and make the roster. Unfortunately for him, I think the injury did hold him back for that, and maybe he would have made it, maybe he wouldn't. We don't exactly know. And so the question is, can he come in training camp and show that he's taken, you know, another step forward in the way that he plays, in the way that he, I guess, grasps the playbook as well? And 2 as well, when we think about the Packers potentially adding another free agent wide receiver, maybe Gutekunst has no plan whatsoever to do so. Maybe he does. And if the Packers were to add a free agent wide receiver, I think that there's a less likelihood of Juwann Winfree making the roster, because if, let's say, for example, I would like this to happen. If the Packers signed Julio Jones, I'll be very happy. I would not be opposed to that move whatsoever. And so if Julio did come to this roster, that would, at least in my mind, put 7 other players ahead of Juwann Winfree. And at that point, I don't think he makes the roster. Maybe he can. be that 7th guy if the Packers don't add a free agent. I think that's possible for him. We'll have to wait and see. It's hard too with lots of these guys. It's sort of like we're predicting the future, like what's going to happen with these players, which is fun to do. But at the same time, we just sort of have to let time play out, see how they're looking in training camp, see how they're competing against one another, and then we'll have a better idea, of course, as training camp starts. And then we'll see. When the final roster cuts come out, we'll see who makes the roster for wide receivers. So stay tuned for more Packers videos. If you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button down below if you want to see all Packers content on this channel, all news, updates, all that kind of stuff. And if you haven't followed me on Instagram, Real Sideline Scoop on Instagram for some more content over there. But give me your thoughts in the comments down below on Juwann Winfree. Would love to hear from you guys. But that's it for this one, and I'll see you guys next time.